No worries. Hello, everyone. I am Hannah, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and dive into the talk, if that works. All right. Bear with me 1 second. All right. I'm assuming we look good. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today. As I said, my name is Hannah Lippe, and I'm a director of product management at Fidelity Investments. So today, what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about my experience building products in highly regulated environments. I'm going to speak specifically to my experience trying to conceive of, build, and launch new products in a product innovation lab, specifically in financial services. But I think that those of you working in other similarly regulated industries, like maybe healthcare, transportation, might hear some very familiar challenges and pain points, and hopefully resonate with some of the solutions that I propose. For those of you who don't work in highly regulated environments, you'll get a sense just of how lucky you are. No, just kidding. You'll get a window, into your peers' experiences at other companies, and likely be able to identify, just with having to navigate various teams, barriers, and roadblocks along your way to releasing new products. Before we dive in, let me give you a little bit of background on me. Thank you, Elise, for already doing a little bit of that work for me. So I've worked at Fidelity Labs, which is Fidelity Investments' internal startup incubator, for about 7 years. So Labs' purpose is to identify new product areas that solve important problems for our customers and build new fintech businesses that generate value for our customers and for Fidelity. We have a very explicit mission to innovate on behalf of the firm. So for my first several years here, I worked on projects around student loan debt, healthcare expenses, robo-advisors, you name it. But then over the last 4 years, I have worked on a team that identified an opportunity area around helping financial advisors grow their sustainable investing practice. Sustainable investing means investing in line with your environmental, social, and governance values. We started this project kind of with absolutely nothing. We were kind of asked by leaders to look into, how could we help financial advisors? So we did some really early stage customer research to identify an opportunity area where we saw that financial advisors needed help. And then we built a lot of low resolution prototypes to test the concept, and have since launched a software platform that's registered as an investment advisor that provides tools to help advisors connect with clients and build sustainable investing portfolios. So the platform has now been in market for about 2 years, and we have a growing customer base. I share this with you all so that you have a sense of kind of where I'm coming from and what I've worked on when I talk about innovating in a highly regulated industry. I've navigated some of these challenges from the start of something completely new and non-existent to a situation where we are iterating on a product that is currently in use with our customers. But before I started at Fidelity, I worked for several smaller education and environmental organizations where I built and marketed new programs and services, and worked on some policy efforts. I then attended a grad school program at Stanford, where I actually ended up spending most of my time at the D School, or the Institute of Design, studying design thinking, human-centered design, creativity, and innovation methodologies. So for some of you who maybe aren't familiar with design thinking, it's a problem-solving methodology and solution-building strategy that focuses on deep empathy for the customer, rapid iteration, and learning through hands-on experimentation. This methodology in my studies really resonated with me because it gave me a language and a framework to something that I felt like I'd already been doing in my previous roles, and just made sense to me, caring about what people need, testing ideas quickly before you were too heavily invested, learning, iterating. So I continued to work in design thinking, teaching, I was consulting with a variety of different organizations, from corporate, political to academic, and across many different industries, including journalism, environmental policy, and banking. I ended up deciding to join Fidelity Labs because they wanted to bring in more human-centered design and product folks. And I also just really loved this idea of innovating in the financial services space, which it seemed to me, as someone outside of it, as a space just so critical to people's everyday lives, and yet also kind of so frustrating and archaic, and, if you'll excuse this kind of overused phrase, really like ripe for disruption. And my previous experiences, work, education-wise, had kind of taught me that disruption was the key to innovation. Innovation lay in this mindset of moving fast, breaking things, taking risks, go fast, don't pay attention to any rules, have a bias towards action, move past the things that have been done before into the future. So that was, when I came to Fidelity Labs, that was really like the mindset that I was coming with. But when I arrived at Fidelity, trying to do something new was like hitting a brick wall. And I imagine maybe some of you have had this experience before, where it seemed like there was red tape and rules and reasons to shut down new ideas and new ways of working, really like left and right. For example, like we wanted to just practice empathy interview skills by interviewing people at the local train station about their public transportation experience, but we couldn't just walk outside. We couldn't do that without permission. We wanted to rewrite some very jargony language about healthcare expenses to be more human friendly. We had to go back and forth on edits 8 or 9 times. And I was just not used to being slowed down like this. I couldn't understand, like, why is this happening? We were brought here to do something new. We came to Fidelity to innovate. That's the mission of this organization that I'm in. Why are we being slowed down? And according to my teammates, what I started to learn was that the root of this no was this like foreboding group called Legal Risk and Compliance, or LRC, who are the group of attorneys and regulatory professionals who were charged with ensuring that our firm abided by the regulations governing our industry. They were the cause for this chill that ran through our bones, when we had an idea for a new feature product and knew that we would need to get it through this gauntlet. And I felt like the impact of LRC could be felt everywhere. So whether it was early in our opportunity identification process, when we simply wanted to go out and interview customers about their experiences, or writing content to explain a financial services concept in a way that wasn't entirely confusing, or getting a new user analytics platform on board, or really every step along the way to launching and marketing, a brand new software product and business. The red tape and no's could be felt everywhere. So having come from these smaller organizations with a lot of flexibility and in not a highly regulated industry, I was surprised and at sometimes really discouraged. I felt like we were working on these incredibly important problems, like helping people deal with student loan debt, pay their healthcare expenses, save for retirement, invest in line with their values. And I was trying to move as quickly as possible to learn about customer challenges, test new ideas with them, and make solutions available. And at every step along the way, I felt like I had to ask permission, get edited, and maybe even just get fully rejected. And compared to my previous roles where I sort of understood innovation to be compared or to be really like equated with speed, I felt just like incredibly slowed down and stifled. And I started to, have this feeling of like, oh, maybe I get why some of these, this industry can feel so archaic, because maybe it's like not even possible to innovate within, within this environment. But as I started to spend more time with our LRC partners and really started to listen more to their concerns and understand their process, I realized that, while I wanted to go fast and they wanted to move more carefully, we really actually had the same goals at heart. The heart of what we were trying to do, from the product side, which was build new products that create value for customers, was really very aligned with what our legal and regulatory partners were trying to do, which was to protect our customers. So at the center of everything that we were doing and thinking, and what LRC was doing and thinking, was our customers. And I started to understand that these regulations and the people ensuring that we abide by them, were really not adversaries, but in fact, these massive resources and benefits to our work. We also found them, I started to realize that they were really more of like a competitive advantage, because In our world, like, we certainly aren't the only regulated company. Everyone has to deal with the same regulations. So to be able to deal with them excellently and efficiently while also solving a really important customer problem could actually be a competitive advantage for us. So in order to navigate the regulations and the possible restrictions, we had to not dwell on the limitations, but instead really focus on working with the people who could help us understand and innovate within the boundaries. So rather than seeing those people as barriers to what we wanted to do, we needed to work with them, doing a better job of bringing them into the conversation early and focusing on building a shared understanding and purpose. So I'm going to share with you now a few of the practices and mindsets that I found to be most successful when working with our legal partners. So first, to think about bringing LRC into the team with an understanding of their purpose and goals, really bringing them in with the same empathy that you would apply to your customers. So it's so important to understand, like, what is that LRC actually trying to do? Their job and their goal isn't to stop you. It is to protect the customer and the firm. Their name, their careers, their reputation is at stake in these situations. And so their job and what they're trying to do is to warn you of potential red flags and help find solutions. So, by demonstrating empathy for their needs and goals and aligning those goals with your own, kind of helping them see how you are both customer focused, you can work with them to find solutions that create new value for and protect your customers. And I think the most important step here is to bring the legal risk and compliance teams in early to your process and really as a part of your product team. So it's very easy to want to avoid being told no and just proceed without LRC until the last minute. But if you wait until your idea is developed or even built, you might find yourself in a worse situation. So you want to develop the product together and give them a view of the roadmap in advance so that you can understand well ahead of time what some of the concerns may be. So for example, on the project that I work on right now, we started working with our LRC team. And when we initially started, we would wait to show LRC what we had built until we submitted it through the formal review process, which is a time-intensive process. And then they would send back questions or corrections, and we'd feel upset that we had worked so hard on something, only had to have it shut down or changed at the last minute. So we decided to set up a weekly preview meeting where we had scheduled time to discuss anything that was in motion, whether it was in the early stage or in the later stages. We also started sharing our 6-month roadmap so that we could talk about future ideas and discuss any potential concerns well in advance before building or creating anything. We really started interacting with them as part of the product team that was involved in shaping the solution from the beginning, rather than as a barrier that we would face down the road. And this not only changed our relationship with them, but it also sped up our process and effectiveness considerably. So kind of in working together as a team, it is very important to also think about understanding the network of people, both the individuals that you work with immediately and the broader organization, to understand their different roles, concerns, working styles, and kind of an authority. So depending on the complexity of your product or your business group or your firm, there might be a very large and complicated network of legal risk and compliance folks who are supporting you. That is certainly the case of Fidelity. You may interact regularly with a couple of people, but in order to get done what you actually need to do for your business, you probably are going to need to be aware of that broader group. So, for the folks who you work most closely with, you want to get to know them and their working styles, their concerns, any innovation experience they may have, or their areas of expertise. And then you want to understand, what groups are they in? Who do they work with? Do they communicate? Who on their team kind of communicates most regularly with the regulators? Or do they have other projects that are demanding some of their time? So, for example, when we started working with our LRC team, they had just spent and were still spending a bunch of time with another team launching an incredibly complex product that they had to learn and kind of understand. So they now had to quickly learn our product space, while also managing the work of the team that had just launched a product. And they were, we were trying to like rush into, all right, we want to get this thing out the door. We want to make it available to customers. And in the meantime, they were trying to kind of stay above water on their project and get their heads barely wrapped around ours. And it was important for us to realize that, while we were trying, we were kind of like, oh, why haven't we heard back from them? When are they going to help us move this next thing through? It was so important for us to have the empathy that was this group of people is operating in a bigger world than just supporting us. They're really, a group of folks who are working on a range of different projects, and we have to be respectful of all of that, of all of like what's going on for them. So, it's also really important to understand this bigger network and ecosystem that they're in, because the decisions are often made, with different people who may or may not be in the room, and kind of through collaboration with various folks. So, you may end up needing to have the same conversation several times and be prepared to tell the story of what you're trying to do and why for a bunch of different audiences as the folks that you're working with start to learn, okay, this might impact this situation, this might impact this situation, we need to bring in more folks. So having kind of a broader understanding of the network of people and who they are and what their different roles are is so important, for being able to get decisions made. And again, be prepared to tell your story as many times as you need to make sure that all the right people hear it. Within this network of people, I highly encourage you to find an advocate who is very excited to bring innovation to the business and to the customers, and who can kind of help translate your ideas to others who might be more resistant. So, if there's someone, who has some authority and maybe with the ability to kind of understand the value of the vision you're offering, they can really help communicate your ideas in maybe a more palatable way than you can. For instance, when I was working on a project 5 years ago around student loan debt, we had a particularly enthusiastic legal partner who we worked with that was just so supportive of helping us really connect closely with customers and test new ideas with them. We called him our legal eagle, and we included him in a lot of our work and a lot of our process. He was very excited to kind of learn and experience this new way of working, as well as to share with us some of the boundaries or the concerns that he might have. He then went on to become a legal eagle, if you will, for many more teams and labs, really acting as an advocate for our innovation work more broadly within his colleagues of LRC professionals, helping us make our ideas more understandable and palatable, and then also helping us, to understand why we couldn't do something. So he was really able to wield an influence that we just simply couldn't. So the last thing that I will leave you with is that, I think it's important to understand at least the gist of the regulations you're operating in. So as I mentioned before, this whole process really is less about the regulations and it's more about the people and the relationships, but doing your best to at least understand kind of the concerns of the regulations at a high level is very important. You don't have to be an expert in the regulations. That's why we're so fortunate to be able to work with the professionals that we do. But we do need to listen and learn so that you don't continue to, kind of repeat the same issues, whether it's using certain words that go against LRC guidance or sidestepping accidentally, like the formal review process. And I found that this comes up mostly when, or often, I guess, when we are growing our team. So as we grow our team, it's important that we can pass along our knowledge of the regulations and how to work with our LRC partners to our new team members so that the burden isn't on them, on LRC. So for example, we've brought on new copywriters and content strategists onto our team who we've kind of had to train to not use words in their writing that, like in any other situation that any other person might typically use when thinking about helping someone else, helping a customer understand their finances, things like suggest or recommend, because those are just words that we know we will not be able to allowed to use in the regulatory environment that we operate in, just given the context of what we're offering. So rather than test LRC's patience every single time, we need to pay attention, listen, and learn, like help our teammates also understand the gist of, what the boundaries are. So just to kind of leave you with some final thoughts, innovation in a highly regulated industry takes time and it can feel slow. But once I realized that these slowdowns were really in service of our customers, and once we started working with our regulatory teammates rather than in opposition, I realized just how important it was to have those checks and balances, because the reason these industries are highly regulated is because they're critical to a customer's livelihood, health, safety. So, as a consumer, while I might be okay with having super quick changes happen to my grocery delivery service or to my media platform, I want the institutions that safeguard my money and my health to really take this role seriously and to innovate with my best interests in mind. So, while things might go a little bit slower, we're all still working towards that same goal. And the more we're able to work as a team, the smoother and faster we will deliver new products and a great experience for our users. So with that, say thank you all for spending some time with me, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. One of the main, we have a option for our guests to ask questions beforehand. And one of the main questions we got was, when do we evolve legal in the process? And that was one of the answers you got right out of the way. And same thing with the advocate thing. I think people are looking for that anchor. How do we find someone who can understand what we are looking for? And so that innovative, advocate is just such a great idea. And we do have a couple preloaded questions, and one of them kind of bounces off what you answered. So how involved should legal be in the planning of roadmaps and strategies?
Yeah, I think maybe I already said this, but I think they should be, really involved from the get-go. I think, they don't need to be involved in the process of prioritizing what it is that you work on. That's really for you and your business partners to say, this is the thing we think is most important for customers. But as soon as you have any idea of this is the type of thing that we are considering, whether it's, new feature, new kind of broader product change, get those legal partners in the door. So, I will do, it's also very helpful in that process to just write something down rather than talking about it. Try and put a little bit of thought onto paper so that, they can look at something, they can read it, they can wrap their heads around it, even the tiniest bit, and have something to really react to rather than just kind of sharing it verbally. But yeah, I would say, figure out the things that you think are important for your customers in the next 6 months, and then immediately share them with your partners, and then have them. I think it's important because what we learned is, just as much as design takes time and product development, the developers need their time to do their thing, the legal team needs their time to do their thing. So early in that kind of analysis or discovery phase, starting to understand the legal boundaries for what you can and cannot do is so important. So, that takes time and should be kind of considered part of the bigger product development process, which is early stage analysis, down to right before we release a new feature, we have to have them, take a week, 2 weeks sometimes to review everything and go back and forth with edits. So when you're thinking about building out that roadmap, having that time booked into the process with your legal team is super, super important.
And if you think about it, you're avoiding any future roadblocks, because legal is it can be a huge roadblock that you can't cross sometimes. So if you have them right there in the beginning, there's no option for that. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
And you talked on it a little bit, how legal team isn't always, their innovation isn't on their brain. It's not the first thing that they're thinking about, like product managers. So one of the questions that we got was, when there is strong resistance from the regulatory teams, should I circumvent the lawyers and appeal to the CEO?
I think to some degree, it's a little bit like, how big of an organization are you talking with? Does the CEO have a really great relationship with the legal team and they can talk to them, or is the CEO way over here and the legal team's over here? So it a little bit depends on kind of the nature of your of your organization. For example, I would not be able to speak to my CEO if I wanted to. But I think that's where, like, starting from the beginning, building that relationship from the ground up, so you never get in the position of saying, oh my gosh, we're at this place where we really want to do something and like we can't get any form of a yes from the folks that we're working with. So I think like goal number one would be to avoid that situation in general. Then number two, if you are in a situation where you feel like you need someone else to weigh in, I think the best thing to do would be, in that kind of understanding of the network, think about who are the people that might listen to me, and the LRC folks the people who are saying no to me would feel comfortable with me talking with, and would feel comfortable with kind of maybe hearing a different perspective from. Because if it feels like alienating to them, or where you're subverting them or going around them or sort of forcing them into a situation, like, you're going to have a real hard time going forward from there. I don't know that you guys will be friends again. So I think it's like, is there someone that you can involve in that situation that, like, they will be excited to hear from and excited to learn from? That kind of goes back to that finding an advocate who can kind of help translate for both of you. And I think, like, again, that's where starting this process from the beginning of building those relationships, finding the advocates, understanding the people is so important, so you just don't get to those situations.
Yeah, and you made a really good point. It's one of the easiest ways to break a relationship, and then in the future, what do? You don't have your legal team supporting you and your ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, if you want to have no more good outcomes. But yeah, I think start from the beginning.
And we did have a live question just come in. It is, how do you avoid legal disclosures from taking away from / convoluting the digital experience?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's a good
one. I think it depends. It depends a little bit on where, your legal teammates are in wanting you to put the disclosures. I mean, we have a lot of disclosures. I don't know if you guys saw the disclosures on my slides. They were on there too. But I think it's like on our website, we do have a lot, but they're all at the bottom. So, we're able to fit in a ton of text, but it's not until it's on the bottom. And we do think about, like, all right, is there stuff in these disclosures that's really important for people to know? And is there something that we kind of want to bring to the top? Because, sometimes disclosures feel just like, oh, this is just a lot of, legal jargon that nobody wants to know. And sometimes it's like, there's actually important stuff in there that we might want to address in another way. So, thinking about, okay, for the most part, everything is going to go like in the bottom part of the footer of the page, and hopefully no one sees it or gets distracted by it. And sometimes it's like, actually, there's a bit of information we'd like to pull out. So from a website perspective, I found that that's usually pretty simple. And our legal team seems very fine with that, just have it at the bottom of the page. Sometimes there are things like, we'll have a one pager that we'll send out from a marketing perspective, and the one pager will have a one pager of disclosures attached. And, sometimes it's like, all right, that's what we got to do here. And like, we'll make the one pager part that we want them to see like beautiful and really easy to understand and easy to read and pleasant. And then we will just attach that next page and like move forward with our day. So I think it just depends a bit on like the medium that you're operating in. And I think one way that we deal with it is having a bit of a sense of humor, because some of it is just unavoidable. Like, sometimes you just have, one of my colleagues just gave a demo the other day, and the first thing she had to do in the demo was put a slide of disclosures about what she was going to show going forward. And she just kind of like cracked a joke about it and, acknowledged that it was maybe a little bit uncomfortable or jarring, and then moved forward. So I think having a sense of humor internally, where you can externally as well, just to kind of acknowledge that can be helpful.
That's awesome. That's also, it's the way you explained it makes sense. But on your slide, it just was like a little tiny thing in white, and I barely noticed it. So it was only on the first one too.
I should go. I wish I should have like recorded this because this was a very meta experience for me to write this, to create this deck and then submit it to our LRC partners. So I actually pushed this talk. I was supposed to give this talk a month ago, but because I wanted to give our LRC partners enough time to review it, I pushed the talk out a month. And then I also asked them for their input to say, like, is there anything you guys want me to say and include in this? Like, they were like, tell them to bring us in early. And then I had to submit it and get the disclosures on it. And we went back and forth 3 times on what disclosures I was allowed to include in it.
It's just a perfect example.
It was just a perfect example. Yep. I'm like, oh, did I make sure that I showed all the disclosures. Yeah. Yep. So hilarious. It was great. I was like, okay, I got to follow all my own advice here.
That's awesome. And I would say that these last couple questions we have are all related around the same topic, which you kind of hit on. It's basically the regulatory teams, they're very concerned with innovation related risks. So people are looking for ways to encourage the legal teams to go into those uncharted territories. And like, can customer data kind of help with that? Like, what are some specific ways beyond like building that relationship to kind of encourage the legal team?
Yeah. So I think bringing legal teammates into your customer kind of discovery phase is a really effective tool to do that. So, it might be that you have them watch, like if you record an interview, have them watch the interview so that they see the customer's pain point. Or if you do any kind of research, make sure that your legal team sees that, because that's our biggest kind of place of authority that we come from, is being kind of saying, this is what the customer cares about and this is what the customer is struggling with. They really listen to that because, like I said, the customer is at the center of what they're thinking about as well. So if you are able to demonstrate that the customer cares about this and that the customer doesn't understand the jargon that they're using, or the customer is so frustrated by this problem, they will get behind that as well. And it's helpful if you tell them and you explain them, but if you involve them in your process where they're sitting there watching a customer interview with you, or they're going, if there's some world where you can have them interview customers, like that is, such a powerful experience for them and can really get them on your team. That's what with the legal eagle that I mentioned, he would sit in the room with the rest of the team as they watched customer interviews and was just like stunned by the level of pain and discomfort, that this student loan debt process caused them. And that's what really got him on board. So, I think whatever you can do to have that shared sense of understanding of the customer problem will make a really big difference.
That is so smart. It's just like streamline that vision, streamline the mission to every part of the organization to ensure that everyone has that same goal to like solve customer problems.
Yes.
That's amazing. And we did have more questions, but you answered them in your talk, which is the testament of a good talk. So thank you so much. I would like to tell the audience, we will be writing a blog on this specifically, which will go live tomorrow. This this webinar will live on our website indefinitely. So if anyone wants to come back, share it with their colleagues, their friends, you can do that. It will live on our website. So I'll make sure to promote it on social media so you can find it easily. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Yes, thank you, Elise. This was really fun.
Yes, this was great. You have a fabulous rest of your Wednesday.
Awesome. You too.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.